Because you can't manipulate what won't be affected. To be silent is not to be mute. It's choosing which frequency to communicate on. Those who've seen the world from within no longer feel the urgency to explain themselves. Their pauses say more than long, diplomatic sentences. And yet, those who haven't learned to listen to the unspoken will see arrogance, disdain, or coldness. But the silence of an awakened soul is actually a rare kind of compassion, the choice not to invade someone else's time with truths they haven't asked for yet. When your quiet presence causes discomfort, remember, maybe it's not what you said but what you refused to say. Maybe it's what the other perceived and wasn't ready to accept. In times of fiery speeches and inflated egos, silence is a revolutionary act. It shows who you are without needing a performance. And those who live by appearances deeply fear what is too authentic to be explained. 3. The gaze that sees through masks unsettles those who live within them. There are eyes that don't just observe, they strip down. When you develop the sensitivity to see beyond the surface, your mere gaze becomes revealing. And the world, used to polite pretending, doesn't know how to handle such clarity. A gaze that truly sees is, for many, more threatening than any word. Because it doesn't ask permission. It just perceives. Intuition has that uncomfortable gift. It catches nuances, energies, incongruences. No proof, no arguments, just sensation. And what is felt with that level of clarity deeply disturbs those still hiding behind social roles. Masks, when stared at directly, start to crack. And those who live through them feel that as an invasion. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your perception reveals what's being avoided. It's strange but common. People feel intimidated by those who can't be fooled. Because deep down they know they're being seen beyond the veneer. And no one wants to be unmasked before they're ready. That's why your presence is read as uncomfortable, your frankness as a threat. Your gaze is a mirror that doesn't distort, and few can bear to see themselves with such clarity and without embellishment. This power isn't something you flaunt, but something you are. And for that very reason it can't be controlled. It's natural. It's honest. But it takes courage, both for the one who has it and for the one who receives it. Many will avoid you without knowing why. Others will admire you in silence. But one thing is certain. Eyes that truly see don't go unnoticed. They don't judge. They simply see. And for many, that alone is unbearable. For, you don't need to assert yourself. Your energy arrives before your voice. There are people whose presence precedes any words. They enter a room and even before they speak, something shifts in the air. It's not about performative charisma or attention-seeking. It's about a kind of energy that can't be explained, only felt. And that silent force, to those disconnected from themselves, can feel like intimidation. Not out of arrogance but by contrast. You don't raise your voice but your clarity asserts itself. You don't demand respect but you naturally attract it. And that destabilizes those who need to shout to be noticed. There's a magnetism in the calm of someone who knows themselves. A kind of firmness that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Your presence, instead of taking up space, reveals empty spaces in others. And that can be uncomfortable, especially for those still trying to be someone. The truth is, energy doesn't lie. It communicates long before words. Perceptive people feel your strength even when you're not directing it at them. And the more insecure ones, instead of admiring it, react with resistance. Because your inner solidity casts a shadow on fragile structures. And the human tendency is to resist what isn't understood, especially when it reveals how much there is still to evolve. You don't need to change that. Nor should you dim yourself to fit someone else's comfort. The intensity of your presence isn't a flaw to be disguised, but a legitimate expression of your truth. Those who are ready will see it as a beacon. Those who aren't will try to dim your light so they don't have to face their own darkness. But what is genuine always finds its place. And your aura with time will be seen for what it truly is, presence, not threat. 5. The lightness of your freedom weighs heavily on those still living in chains. To be truly free is a revolutionary act. And like any revolution, it breeds resistance. When you live outside the invisible bars that most people accept as normal, your very existence becomes an annoyance. Not because you oppress, but because your lightness exposes the weight others carry. And what's natural for you seems like defiance to them. After all, those who've settled into prison don't know what to do when faced with someone who flies. Your freedom isn't the absence of limits, it's the awareness of choice. You've questioned the rules, broken patterns, freed yourself from others' expectations. And that gave you a lightness that, ironically, is seen as arrogance or rebellion. Because those still tied to fear, approval, and status interpret autonomy as a threat. They don't understand how someone can simply be. Without asking for permission. The truth is you're unsettling because you're whole. Because you don't conform. because you don't pretend. Your refusal to play the social game reveals the artificiality of the pieces on the board. And that destabilizes. Because many need to believe that submission is virtue, that following the script is wisdom. So, when someone lives outside that script, the system short-circuits. And instead of being seen as inspiration, you're labeled as too different. As dangerous. But freedom is contagious. It's frightening at first, but then it attracts. And even if many move away, others will quietly draw closer, trying to understand how you let go. Don't dim your lightness to fit into emotional cages. You're not the weight. You're the reminder that no one has to carry it forever. 6. The clarity with which you see patterns disturbs those still fooled by them. Seeing what's behind appearances is a gift, and also a burden. When your mind begins to decode the hidden mechanisms behind relationships, words, and behaviors, the world stops looking innocent. You start to notice repetitions, disguises, power games. And this clarity, though liberating, makes you an uncomfortable observer. Because your mere presence unmasks what many would rather not see. What is a natural perception for you feels like a direct threat to others. You don't point fingers, but your awareness exposes. Your lucidity, no matter how silent, destabilizes carefully constructed narratives. And the truth is, not everyone wants to wake up. Many are comfortable in illusion. And when someone sees the game without playing it, they become a kind of problem. Someone who overcomplicates, overthinks, or feels too much. But the discomfort you cause doesn't come from criticism, but from clarity. Your ability to see patterns where others only see coincidence is a rare and lonely form of intelligence. You see manipulation masked as affection, dependence hidden in praise, emotional cycles repeating unconsciously. And this doesn't give you superiority. It gives you responsibility. Because once you see, you can't pretend you haven't. This clarity is a call to integrity. An invitation to break from autopilot. Though it may frighten and isolate, it also illuminates. And little by little, you'll be sought not by those who want to keep the veil, but by those who wish to tear it. Your awareness is not judgment, it's a lighthouse. And like any lighthouse, it only bothers those insisting on sailing in the dark. 7. You're not afraid of the shadow, and that unsettles those who avoid it at all costs. Most people live trying to hide what they consider ugly, weak, or unacceptable in themselves. We create masks, narratives, defense mechanisms. But you somehow chose the opposite path. You dove into the dark. And for many that's inconceivable. Because the shadow, as Jung said, is everything we are and don't want to be. Facing it requires a courage few are willing to cultivate. By integrating your shadow, you become more whole and paradoxically lighter. Because you no longer waste energy denying, disguising, or projecting. But that integrity causes discomfort. Those who keep running from themselves can't understand how someone can live in peace with their own pain. Your acceptance looks like carelessness, your courage like recklessness. But in truth, you simply stopped running. And that cruelly reveals who still is. The curious thing is that the more you embrace your imperfections, the more threatening you become to those trying to appear perfect. Your humanity, instead of comforting, unsettles. Because it reveals how much others are still trying to hold up personas. And no one likes to see the theater crumble. So, you may be avoided, misunderstood, or even attacked. Not for who you are, but for what you represent. A confrontation with the repressed. But don't be mistaken. The shadow you embraced is also your strength. It's what gave you depth, empathy, and presence. You've learned that being whole includes embracing chaos, and that makes you a lighthouse for those who also want to be free. Little by little, your courage becomes contagious. Even if it causes discomfort at first, it quietly plants something. The desire to one day stop running. 8. You are a mirror, and not everyone can handle the reflection you provoke. Some people say nothing, but make us think everything. Being in front of someone authentic who doesn't hide is like looking into a mirror that doesn't distort. And that can be unsettling. Because someone else's authenticity reveals, without words, how much we're still attached to edited versions of ourselves. Your presence in this sense is not passive. It invites, challenges, exposes. Those who live on appearances feel your essence like a spotlight. You don't need to accuse or correct, just being is enough. And that already reveals. The discomfort you cause comes from the clarity with which you position yourself, from the coherence between what you feel and what you express. It's as if you're saying without words, it's possible to live without a mask. And to those still trapped behind them, that's not inspiration, it's a threat. Strangely, you're often attacked for behaviors others also have but don't recognize. They project onto you what they can't admit in themselves. It's not personal, it's psychological. The mind, when confronted with uncomfortable truths, defends itself however it can. And one of the most common defenses is to push the mirror away, to criticize the reflection so they don't have to look within. But being a mirror is a rare gift, a kind of presence that heals even if it hurts at first, because it reveals neglected wounds. If some distance themselves, it's not because you did something wrong, it's because your truth touched something too sensitive. And still keep going. Because those with the courage to look into the reflection will find in you not a threat, but a path. 9. Your absence is also presence. You continue to echo in others. Some people don't need to be around to still be felt. You are one of them. Your energy, your words, your silences. Everything leaves a mark. It's not an exaggeration, it's intensity. And that intensity doesn't fade with distance. On the contrary, it's often in your absence that others realize how present you were. And for those who couldn't handle you, that becomes an unsettling echo. Your absence reveals the space your presence occupied. And that space wasn't physical, it was emotional, psychic, energetic. For those not ready for your depth, relief comes first. But over time, the emptiness speaks louder. What they miss isn't company, but the mirror, the challenge, the truth. And once truth is felt, it can't be forgotten. Ironically, you're often only understood after you've left. Because your presence, while constant, was too dense to be absorbed. Too much intensity for numbed routines. But with distance, what once disturbed becomes something they long for. What once seemed excessive becomes clarity. And what was seen as heavy reveals itself as meaningful presence. You don't have to force this memory. It happens on its own. Because those who live in truth remain. Even in silence, even from afar, even when no longer mentioned. Your energy keeps working in memories, in lessons, in the discomforts that became growth. And that invisible permanence is proof that your aura never depended on physical presence to be felt. 10. Deep down, the fear they feel of you is the fear they have of themselves. What scares us in others is often what we haven't recognized in ourselves. Your presence, when authentic and whole, doesn't frighten because it threatens, but because it reveals. It awakens questions in others they've avoided asking. It exposes parts they've worked hard to hide. And deep down, the fear they feel of you is just a reflection of the fear they feel of themselves. You've become, unintentionally, a living reminder of all that's been repressed. Courage, spontaneity, clarity. By watching you, many are faced with possibilities they abandoned. And instead of feeling inspired, they often feel hurt. Because accepting your free existence means acknowledging their own prison. And no one likes realizing that the chains are self-inflicted. It's easier to judge than to take responsibility. Easier to call you too intense, too different, than to admit they're disconnected from themselves. Your aura, with its silent strength, not only shines, it exposes. And what is exposed without a filter provokes. Not out of malice but out of truth. And truth, when it arrives uninvited, is often mistaken for threat. But keep being. Keep unsettling. Because that discomfort is a sign that you're doing what few dare to do, living with wholeness. And even if they fear you, they might secretly admire you. After all, every fear carries the hidden desire to become what's feared. And perhaps, without realizing it, your existence is already opening paths within them. Some presences can't be explained, they are felt. And yours, with all its depth, stirs movements that aren't always visible but are inevitable. Maybe you don't scare because you're threatening, but because you're true. And truth, as we've learned, is rarely received with comfort. It shakes structures, dismantles disguises, and above all, demands courage from those who find it. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these truths hit you the hardest? Where did you see yourself or see others more clearly? Leave a comment. Your insight might be the thread someone else is trying to find within themselves. And if anything here resonated, then subscribe. Not for me but for you. So that this journey of self-awareness keeps finding its way both on and off the screen.